Good morning and welcome back to my studio. So the window is again open so you can peek in and see what I am up to today. I've got a couple things I'll share with you today. The first is I did finish that face mask that I started a couple of days ago here with you live, and it took me 6 hours to make it, which is it seems like a long time for a mask, right? But there is so much stitching on this piece. That's why it takes all the time it does. And because there were all those little bitty pieces as part of the design, it's not, again, I can't go fast. This isn't, super speed racer stitching. It's just not how it works. I consider the stitching phase of everything I make to be kind of a meditation. And so while it's fun to step on the gas on the sewing machine pedal and speed it up a little bit, it's not always possible. And in most cases, it's not. It's this sort of slow and steady pace. So, which is very, supportive of creating a meditative practice while I'm stitching. So I'm going to share the mask with you today. And then the second thing I will share is that I have started a special project for the Florida region of Studio Art Quilt Associates, which is an organization to which I belong. I joined it back in 2014. The organization was founded in 1989 by Yvonne Porcella, who, shameless plug, side note, happened to be my cousin. She's my mother's generation. They are first cousins, and so we're first once removed or second or however that all works. But Yvonne started this organization to promote the art quilt as a fine art medium. And in the years since, they have made tremendous progress with that, and I'm doing my part by making my art to help make that happen too. And while I call my stuff textured fiber paintings, they are ultimately art quilts. And the reason I call them textured fiber paintings is because I make them out of fiber. I create a bunch of texture with the stitching, and ultimately the stitching is kind of like painting all the little pieces on my art. So that's why I name them. That's why I call them what it is. But ultimately, the sandwich is a quilt. There's a backing fabric, there's batting in the middle, and then there's fabric on the top. But this isn't something you're going to lay over your lap and watch TV under. So, I make stuff to hang on the walls, which is also part of why I call them textured fiber paintings. But anyway, to go back to Studio Art Quilt Associates, sorry, I kind of digressed. I do that. SAQA, as the acronym goes, has regions all over the world. They've grown into a worldwide organization, and the Florida region is putting a project together called Fresh Fish. I can't even say that. Oh, wow. And they're collecting everything by the end of October. I don't like to wait till the last minute, so I want to make this fish and then move on to other things. But everything's going to be donated. None of the pieces will be returned, and they've got some ideas of what they're going to do. I think the intent was originally for it to be an exhibition. That's now anything that happens this year, that's probably uncertain. And so it's probably going to be a virtual exhibition. I think there's going to be a book involved. There's a variety of things that they've got going on, but I want to participate because this is my new SAQA region, and I want to make sure I get involved. So I decided I'd make a fish. And this should be fun because I hardly ever make any sort of like representational art that looks like anything. So we'll see what a fish looks like when I use my techniques and my style of creating art. So that's what we're going to do today. We'll hang around for 20-30 minutes until I'm kind of talked out, or I reach a stopping point here for today's studio time or window time. I'll keep working, just window time. And then you'll be able to get back to what you're doing for the day, and I'll continue making art. So I'm going to shift you around so you can see me as I stand sort of where I need to be to do my work, and we'll go from there. So thanks for hanging out, and thanks for peeking in. So let me shift you. I'm going to position you again so you can kind of see the table. And hopefully we'll get this to where I'm not, again, cutting up my head. I always cut off my head. How's that? A little better. I'll lean down today. I'll work hunched over. It's not that long. So anyway, you can see this piece here is kind of and I did post this on Instagram yesterday as well as on Facebook. So if you're scrolling through the feed, you may have seen it. But this is the face mask. This is what we designed together the other day. When the window to my studio was open on Tuesday. So it is fully functional face mask with the lining with the gray felt. However, this is very much an art piece. And so while it could be worn out, to the grocery or to wherever, and certainly someone could do that, it's for sale and it does have an art price point. So there might be a little sticker shock if you're interested in purchasing this. But again, it is for sale, and if you want it, get in touch with me. I'll share with you the price, and then we can talk about getting it into your hands. Shipping would be free. I'm not going to charge for shipping. In fact, none of my art really I'll ever charge for shipping for any of my art, as far as I can say at this point in time. But this mask, it's got little skinny ribbons. And that, again, I did the skinny ribbons to be more decorative and be more art-like, as opposed to a thicker plaid ribbon, of which I have acres and acres and miles, that I mentioned the other day as well, because it just didn't really go, and it didn't really suit this as a functional art piece. So again, it is totally functional, but it's art. So it's a very abstract design. This is, of course, using my technique, my style of making very bright, bold, abstract pieces. But then the stitching on this was incredibly dense. So it took me 6 hours to make. I think I said that when the video started. So 6 hours, that's also part of the, when you're pricing art, you gotta factor in your time a little bit as well. So that's this. I'm gonna bring this closer to the camera a little bit so maybe you can see how densely stitched it is. And so you can see that, see that thread, see how, that's roughly 1/8 to 1/4 inch apart, each one of these little lines, from each other. And so that's what took the time. That and the design piece of it, choosing my colors and putting it together and getting it all laid out the way I wanted and then pressing it in place. But yeah, so the mask is done. It is for sale. The price is $250. So again, it's an art price. But I sort of envision this as somebody purchasing it, and it kind of stands up. Maybe you can put something behind it that you don't really like too much, or a little something, a shot glass or something to kind of hold it up, and you can put it on a surface and display it as a piece of art. Or you could buy like a mannequin head, or a wig stand or something that's got a face, and you could put it on the face of the thing. So I did try this on yesterday, so if anybody purchases it, I will spray the felt with a little bit of Lysol. If you do buy it and you choose to wear it out, I'll send instructions, but I recommend washing these on the delicate cycle in your machine, the hand wash or delicate cycle, and then hanging them to dry. Hang them over a hanger like this. And they seem to work. I have much simpler ones that I made just with the same kind of, with the felt and the whatnot, and that seems to work. I do think I'm going to make some more of these, but I am going to simplify the process a bit. I'm going to take out all of this extra stitching and just stitch around the outside edge of a piece, which hopefully should cut time down to maybe about an hour maybe for this. Those I'll sell probably for about $65, $70, again, because they will be functional art, but they will be, because they won't take me quite so much time, I can ask for a slightly lower price for that. So if you want something that's completely unique and completely different, but still functional, and you're willing to spend a little bit of money, let me know, because I'd be happy to do it. And in fact, I'd be willing to take sort of custom, give me your favorite colors and we'll see what I can create for you. All right. So anyway, so that's the face mask. So it's just really fun. So I'm pleased with it. I think it came out great. Lay that over there out of the way. So this fish thing I'm making, I keep cutting my own head off. This fish I'm making, again, is for an exhibit or a project. I'm tilting this up a little bit. I can't lean like that all day, but I can move it closer. So, no, I still gotta do it. There is no good way to do this. Anyway, the fish is for a project, and so I got to the point of creating my template today, which I always do usually on tracing paper, but my tracing paper is so large I just used some 11 by 17 and taped it together and drew the fish outline, just like I do for my feeling series, where I just have an outline and I create a template and I cut the pieces out. And because I'm going to do this using my same usual technique. So there are limitations on this. This is part of why I very rarely enter shows. Many times because I just don't have something to fit. Lots of times I don't have time to plan ahead of time for when I come across an entry because I don't really dig into that on a regular basis to get into exhibitions. And so, and oftentimes in the art quilt world, a lot of times they're looking for things that are square, and I don't make square. So this fish project, I didn't have to be square, but it is limited to a 12 by 12 finished piece, 12 inch by 12 inch finished piece, which is, you know, like the mask, a little smaller than I usually work. But I chose to make it in fish shape. I could have made something that had small fish all over it, or been an underwater scene or whatnot. But I decided, because again, I make odd shaped things, let's make a fish shape. So that's what I did. So like I said, I created the template off the paper, and then cut the paper out, and then it is actually currently pinned to 2 pieces of white muslin, because that's what I use to kind of help build it. So there's the 2 here, and I will eventually unpin these to get started. But then, so that phase of it is done. I have multiple steps to create my art, and we now have the fish template. Well, when I do the templates, I always make 2. And I make one that is to give me the template to cut out my muslin, and then I make a second one that allows me to create the shape for my canvas, because I take one of these pieces of muslin and then I cut out larger pieces of color with, again, sort of odd abstract shapes, and then create and lay them down on the can and lay them and fuse them to one piece of muslin, fuse them in place. That creates the canvas, and then I build all the colored bits on top of it. So much like I did with the mask, where the purple was ultimately my canvas, and then these other pieces were the design elements. So that's what I will do with this fish. And so the template for the fish, I used yellow because I'm thinking tropical fish. Anyway, so there's the template, and that is 12 inches by 12 inches. But see the numbered pieces, those are basically my pattern pieces for the canvas. And the dotted lines you saw on there are kind of like, look at these dotted lines. I do that to kind of as my own reminder as I cut out each of these individual pieces, and then pin them to whatever color I'm going to choose for this canvas. The plate where you see this sort of hashed line, that's kind of what I call like my seam allowance. I cut a little bit extra, so I don't cut right up against the edge of the paper on the fabric. I go out about half an inch to an inch, so that that way I can overlap these pieces, and so I don't have any gaps showing the muslin through. It's just my little hack for that. So my next step in this process, because of where I am, is to cut out these canvas pieces, and then we're going to choose color. And because I drew this in yellow, I'm leaning towards a background of yellow for a canvas of yellow for this fish. And then I can get really wild with the colors on top of it, and really make them kind of fun and tropical. So I am going to shift you back a little bit so you can see a little more what I'm doing. I probably should have got a stand to put the thing on, put my iPad on, but I didn't. So one of the things I want to mention is that I've got 2 pair of scissors here. So these are my paper scissors. These are fabric scissors. There's a difference. And the difference is that you don't cut paper with your fabric scissors. It dulls the edge. Now, it's not to say you can't get your scissors sharpened. You can. But right now, where the heck would you even go? In normal times, you could go to places like Sur La Table and get where they do knife sharpening, and you can probably get your scissors sharpened. Or you can find a knife die or whatever. Or if you go to a big, quilt show or those sorts of things, they often have they sell quilting and sewing and cutting of fabric scissors at those kinds of shows, and a lot of times they'll sharpen them there for you. But right now, none of that's happening. And I just saw something recently that Sur La Table is filing for bankruptcy, which makes me sad, because that's a fun store. Like Williams-Sonoma, they're just fun to go in and wander around, but maybe that's the problem. Maybe there's a bunch of people like me who go in and wander around and look at stuff, but don't end up buying anything. So maybe that's the deal. But anyway, the difference between the paper scissors and the fabric scissors is really just, you don't ever want to use your fabric scissors on paper, because you will dull the edge rapidly, and then it becomes ridiculously hard to cut your fabric. So you always have 2 pair. So my fabric pair I will set aside, and I always keep the cover on my fabric pair, because it also keeps the tips sharp and the edges nice and everything else. So with my paper scissors, I'm cutting the fish out now. And then I'm going to cut out all these little pieces. And I number them because I need to just remember, it's not like I couldn't figure out how to put the puzzle back together, but why complicate my life more than I need to? So, this part's always kind of fun. This part always reminds me of, it takes me back to childhood, right? Creating paper dolls and clothing for paper dolls and things like that. Or collage projects or school art projects, that sort of thing. Ultimately, I have not had any formal art training, so I can't speak to what going to art school would be like. But I do feel sometimes that creating art is this way of, I shouldn't even say sometimes, all the time. I feel that creating art is this opportunity to reconnect to your childhood self and to, kind of bring back some of those fun things that we do as children, like, cutting fun shape, cutting things out of paper and creating something from it. But I'm cutting out the big full fish shape here, just because it's easier that way. And then I'll cut out all these little pieces. And I will cut the pieces out on the solid lines. I'll show you that here in a sec. So I finish getting my way all the way around. Software can't see what I'm doing. The paper's getting in my own way. I'll probably be working on this fish for a little while. I may start a few more masks over the weekend while I'm also working on this fish. Because again, I think I mentioned, the fish isn't actually due till the end of October, but I don't see any reason to wait till the end. Why not do it now? Because if I don't do it now, the next thing I know, it'll be like mid-September, and I'll be like, no! So now I have this fish shape with the little pattern, so closer so you can see it. Let me just take this extraneous paper. I will not crumple it up and make loud noises. Maybe throw it out in a little bit. And now I'm going to cut these out. I'm going to probably need more tape that I need to go get, but anyway, I'll do that after. So I'm following the curve that I made, so like you can see, following the curve of each one of these, because that's what I want the canvas to do. I want the canvas to have these sort of organic curved shapes to it, that again, some of it will be hidden behind the design elements once the piece is done. Yeah, I'll have to take those better. And I just sort of work my way around and cut them all. And then once I get this cut, I'm going to grab some fabric, which is off to my right here. And like I said earlier, I think I'm leaning towards doing a yellow. So I'm going to pull some yellows out of my stash, and we'll see if I have some pieces that are large enough to do what I want to do. If not, I'll have to fuse it. That probably won't happen on camera today. It'll happen when I get off. My goal for today is to get to the point where at least I have a canvas. You and I, let's see if we can at least get the colors picked out. All right, so now all the little pieces are cut out. I do need some, I'm gonna need some more tape. Do I have a stapler in here? Stapler would work. I don't have tape in here, oddly. Let me find my stapler. There we go. Because that's I need it to stay together. So I end up with the right side. That's a little, that'll hold it for now. I'll do the same thing to this piece too, because I'll add some tape later. So anyway, so now I've got all these little pieces cut out. And now I need to choose fabrics to go with it. I'm done with my paper scissors for the entire project. So those will get put away. So let me grab my yellow. So here I've got a stash. This is all bits and pieces I've used on other art projects for other art pieces. And so and it's all got fusible on it, so I won't have to do too much. I won't actually have to add any to it if I can find pieces that are large enough, which should be okay. It should be easy to do because these pieces are really kind of small. But I'm just going to check sort of what I got. There's nothing real, because I'm choosing yellowish hair. There's nothing super technical about this. This is more a matter of, will something fit? So like that piece isn't big enough. This is the simpler portion of the design phase, just because I'm just choosing shades of a color. I can't get my fingers on them. Not quite, because nope. Because I need to have enough, where these dotted lines are, I got to have enough on my piece of fabric to cut, to give me extra. Ooh, it'll work for this one. All right. So this one, where am I putting? This guy's got color. And then I pin the pattern piece to it, so that when I cut it out, I follow the shape. So two's got one. I might end up having a few stuff. I'm not looking. Things aren't quite as big as I thought I had. This is too light yellow. I want bright and bold, big and bold. That's too small. Ooh, what's this? This is a good size. A little light, but let's see what I can fit on here. That will work. And I'll check this later. It's possible I'll change my mind. Rarely do I do that though. I tend to go with whatever fits, and it usually always works, for which I am grateful. Big print piece. Yeah, that's a different one. All right. This one. We got lots of this. All right. Let's do. There's plenty of this one in there. Yep, making sure it's all right fusible. I'm gonna go on this end. So I'm I do try to not waste fabric if I can help it. We might go a little longer than 30 minutes today, guys. Just because you might be finding, at least get to the part where I am going to cut it off a little bit. Where I am getting ready to fuse it. And then my tiny little nature makes me put them all away. Not big enough, I can tell. Probably not going to work. Nope. Nope. Those are a bunch of little pieces. That's too mustardy. This looks big enough for some reason. This for the this one. It's possible my middle's going to be the piece that's, I might have to cut some out, or it'll match. I don't know. I don't want to do that. But there's some similarities to what I'm doing here with this sort of this pattern for the canvas for this fish. It's very similar to making clothes. You know, in terms of creating a pattern and pinning the pattern to it and so on and so forth. So some of that comes back. Is this, if I use this? I don't think this is big enough. No. I try not to use the same color, especially if they're going to be next to each other. Oh, maybe it's going to be this light one after all. Yeah, so it's in the center, which means it's going to get covered up with a lot of stuff anyway. So, and I know that because of my dotted lines all the way around, so I know this is a centerpiece. So I'm going to kind of put that in the middle. And it's the canvas always doesn't really look like much. It's when I start covering it with all the other pieces and parts and design elements that makes it look fun and interesting. Yep, totally missed the fabric. Alright, so those are all pinned. Set those aside. I don't want my paper, I want my fabric scissors again, because now I'm going to cut around these pieces and create that sort of pattern, or create the canvas pieces. So I'm on this one here, I don't know if you can see it, but I'm cutting, because of that dotted line, I'm cutting around it enough so that I create that so it'll allow me to do some overlap when I lay it on the fish, or lay it on the muslin rather. I apologize. So get all these cut. I can't. It's funny because I can't press these pieces before I do this piece of it because they get a little wrinkly when I fold them up when they become scraps from an earlier project. But if I press them now because they've got fusible on it, then I would stick them to something I don't want to stick it to. So what I want to do is stick it to my canvas, not the ironing board. So I'll clean up my scraps in a bit. I'm going to move these over to the right. Yeah, we're going to go today until we get this pinned at least to the canvas so you guys have some idea what it's going to look like. So now this one, because I only have a couple edges that need to be longer, I'm going to trim as close to the paper as possible with my fabric scissors without cutting the paper, where there isn't that hash line. And then go out beyond when I do get to a hash line to create that seam allowance overlap. One of the things I don't worry about too much is if I catch, if you've ever worked with fabric before, or you've ever made anything with fabric, you probably know that on the edge of fabric, when you buy it from the store, there's this, what they call the, I just lost the name of it. I don't remember what the name is. It's not the seam allowance. Anyway, it's often where the, it's like the edge of the fabric, and it's got sometimes the name of the fabric or the manufacturer on it. And I don't worry too much. If it's got somebody's name on it or it doesn't match the same color, I don't want to use it. But if it blends in, I don't care. Because again, so much of the canvas in particular gets covered up, and it just adds a little more texture to it, which is what I'm going with my work. being like super pretty with my cutting here. I mean, other than eyeballing my distance and whatnot. One of the things I absolutely love about making the art I make is that I don't have to be precise. Back when I first was teaching myself to quilt, and I say that because my mother has quilted for years. But before I started doing this, I just noticed a spot where I'm like, I think I'm supposed to cut. Yeah. Anyway, when I first, my mother taught me to make sure I learned how to sew, because, short, gotta hem stuff. But when I went to learn to quilt, I didn't take classes initially, and I just was learning this on my own. And, so as a result, I made a lot of mistakes, right? And probably made the process a little bit more difficult for myself. But one of the things I found is that when I started, I was trying to do like more traditional type designs, or patterns or whatnot, because I did have a bunch of books. I still have them on, that's trash, on making quilts, in your traditional designs. And the precision that's necessary for so much of that just really didn't suit me, which is funny because I've got I have OCD for things. Like, I'm a super neat and tidy artist. I'm very organized, and whatnot. But when it came to when it comes to having to be like precise with the piecing of the fabric, I just it drove me nuts. And what would happen is that because of my sort of OCD, a little bit of perfectionism, when it wasn't coming together perfectly, then I would be really hard on myself. And I almost wonder sometimes if that's not really why I want to make art quilts, is because the precision isn't as necessary. But who knows? There's probably something to that. I don't dig into it too much. I just know that I make what I like to make. So I've never made a bed quilt. Never made anything that size. The largest I've ever made is probably a 3 foot by 4 foot piece. Sort of baby quilt or lap quilt size. That's the largest I've ever made. And I'm okay with that. So, all right, so now, on my pins, I'm going to take the template off the fish, or the fish template off the muslin, because we are ready to lay the canvas out and pin it in place so that I can press it. So I'll move that. I don't need that. I don't need both pieces of this at the moment. So while I have 2 pieces of these, I have 2 fishies. One of them was going to go, I'm going to take one of them here and I'm going to put these colored canvas bits on them. And then the other one, once I get the design done, then I will put the batting underneath this one, and then I'll put this other piece of muslin behind it, and it really just gives me another layer when I'm working it through the machine. So first I'm going to lay these pieces up on the fish to kind of get me kind of lined up with the edge of that muslin. And there's always going to be a little bit of overlap. It's sort of how it works. It'll go beyond. I don't know about that one. I'm going to check that. So I'm trying to lay them on here before this was the face. I tend to lay them down before I didn't take a picture of this. There it is. I usually take a picture before I cut everything out so I know how I'm laying things down. Well, still going to go. There we go. Pull it out. 3 in the middle. Laying down. This paler fabric that ended up in the middle is going to get covered up with stuff. At the moment, I'm just sort of laying them to see if I can get them where I want them. Not coming together as well as it usually does, so I don't know if that's because I'm talking or what, but possible. So get this, if I get the patterns off of it, it'll help. Then I can see better what I'm doing anyway. So this piece has a funny piece cut on it. Let me pull this off here. Sometimes they don't come together well until I take the paper off. Because again, then I can see what I'm looking at and I have a better idea of how to position them. Okay, so that was. I know what I did there. I forgot to cut out extra, so I gotta shift it. Alright, that's fixable. Fixable. Put this here. I'm not worrying about so much about perfect alignment against the muslin, just because when I'm done, I kind of finish off the edge anyway, and that tends to resolve any issues there may have been. I think. This is the one that ended up with a bunch of extra that I don't need, so I will cover that up. And then sometimes I don't like how it looks, like I end up with little wedges that I don't really care for. So like this, use the right scissors, is all kind of clean up a piece a little bit. I'm just cleaning up this edge because it's giving me too much extra that I don't want. Throw that out. And then this piece here, I got this weird little wedge I don't want. Curve that. That happens sometimes in the design, so. Alright, so I've got all the muslin covered that I want to cover. So now I'll pin it all in place so that I can fuse it. I have to do a little cleanup. I try to pin where the pieces overlap so that when I pick it up it doesn't all fall apart. As well as just pinning there too. I try not to poke myself because that's never fun. Probably gonna have to go around and clean up a little bit on this one. There's too much. I ended up with a lot more overlap than I usually end up with. So again, I think it has to do with talking and working at the same time. That's okay. It's absolutely fixable. The only thing that wouldn't be fixable is if I hadn't ended up, if everything was too small. So, if I take this up, it's going to fall apart? No. So, now I got a canvas for my fish. So, my next step will be, when I get off of the Facebook Live here, is I will go ahead and put this on the ironing board, and I will get this all fused down, and then after that I'll start playing with the design and start adding some color to this fish so that it can, again, kind of explode out and create, a more abstract design like the mask. So we'll see how it turns out. I will probably still be working on this next week when I open the studio again next Tuesday. So come on back and visit then. Let me shift over and just say bye to you. Get closer. But yeah, so I will, like I said, I'll probably still be working on this when I come back next Tuesday. I might be working on a mask or two again too, you never know. But yeah, thanks for hanging out. Thanks for watching. Thanks for letting me show you my process, or at least this phase of my process. It's always fun to kind of share. People do always wonder how I do it. And other than that, go have a fabulous, fantastic day. Stay safe and healthy. And we will see you again next time. Take care. Bye-bye.